I won this oversized card at YCS Dortmund with TEARLAMENTS. Look at this bad boy, look how big it is. Now I'm a real YouTuber with this thing in my background. If you still need a beautiful deck box or playmat, you can go to zerodamagegaming.com and use the code SOLEM for a discount. Look at this pretty lady. So right here we have my TEARLAMENT deck list. I sadly played Pearly in the main event and just got blown out by people's Evenlies in combination with other cards, even though Evenly isn't that great into Pearly. But when you open it with Book of Moon and Floodgates and everything, well, GG. So then I swapped to the side events and started grinding those to try and get a big old card, and that worked out. TEARLAMENT's my favorite deck, let's go over it. But before we start with the tier cards, I want to say I was playing with King of the Swamp. Now this was a heated topic over the weekend. Jesse Cotton made his video where he said that King of the Swamp isn't that great, and honestly I'm inclined to agree with him. I actually played two different lists. On Saturday I played without King of the Swamp, and on Sunday I played with King of the Swamp. And both have their merits. It's absolutely insane to me how many TEARLAMENTS players were just raging at him that King of the Swamp is required and you don't know what you're talking about. Clearly you haven't tested enough. I'm like, bro, do you know Jesse Cotton? Are you a fucking idiot? I swapped to this on Sunday because so many people were actually on TEARLAMENTS that I was like, oh, if I get Dwellered, at least I can start playing with Guardian Chimera, which might get me back in the game. But overall, I do actually hate this card, and I think moving forward, we might see a non-King of the Swamp type deck being the better option. But for now, let's check out my Sunday list, at least with the King of the Swamps. If you want to see my Saturday list, which was with Cartesia actually and no Kings, really wacky list, let me know in the comments down below. Triple King of the Swamp, one Poly, then we have triple Rhino Heart, of course, the beautiful ulti right here. I do not know why you would ever not play 3 of this card. It is one of your best mills because it is essentially a pseudo name. We only have 1 of each name and suddenly you can play 6 and you would choose not to. That's crazy to me. People might say, oh, it's not a great normal summon because you have to like dump tier cash to mill 2, but very often that's what's required, especially if you also play Fenrir, because that way Fenrir plus Rhino Heart is actually a mill 5. I do play Fenrir especially because if so many people are on TEARLAMENTS, I want to have Fenrir on my board. Like, yeah, go right ahead. I will Agido you in game 1. I will have Fenrir on my board. Go ahead. Make your rule, Kolos. Make my fucking day. Also, Dweller me, special summon Fenrir, Lamau, get fucked. So triple Rhino Heart, extra good if you do play Fenrir, or, you know, if you are good at drawing tier cash. Also very important if you are playing the Bahamut Shark line. Then we have triple tier cash, of course. I mean, it is one of your best mills, one of your best draws. It is also insane to make Baron with if you play the Strudo. Overall, just an incredible card. It has to be at 3. Then we have our names. Honestly, in my opinion, they should just ban every Ishizu card, put them all to 0, and give us back more names. I will take that any day of the week. Then we have triple Pearl Rhino, of course, the best card in the deck. You will notice that I actually play goods at high copies because if you're not playing with Pearl Rhino, you're so behind, it's insane. Then triple Scream because I want to have as many good mills as possible, and also this is extra good with Rhino Heart. Like, if you open this with Rhino Heart, you know you're probably playing, and even if you somehow mill awful, which is such a low chance if you open both, you know on your opponent's turn, you will also keep on playing. So Scream, absolutely amazing. It's basically both a good draw and a good mill, which is what you really want in TEARLAMENTS, and they are hard to come by. Like, some people are playing some of the worst draws just because they're good mills, or they're playing some of the worst mills just because they're good draws, and whenever you have access to a card that is actually both, like Scream, I just want to max that out. Then I'm playing one Grief. This is like a really solid extender, but also under Droll, this is very important to me. Being able to banish one of the traps with tier cash because I'm locked out of, you know, adding from deck, and then being able to like mill a Grief with Kaleido Heart in order to add the trap to my hand that way is super, super important. I don't think many people respect just how good Droll is into tier, and so I would rather just, you know, not auto lose to that card. Also, by playing this, I always feel very good about tier cash banishing my traps because I know there's some way to get them back. Then I got 2 Sulik, 1 Meta Noise. I saw a lot of people cutting Meta Noise because cash is gone, but Meta Noise is not actually an anti-cash card. Obviously, it's good against cash, but the more important part of this card is the add back. Once again, if we get drolled, I still want to be able to keep on going. Also, randomly going like Kaleido Hearts and Meta Noise to add tier cash back to play on my opponent's turn even more is super important as well. And also, every single player runs triple Fenrir, so there are still the best cash cards in the game inside the format. So I'm actually totally fine with it, even setting this, knowing I'm probably gonna set a Fenrir, or if I'm playing against a deck that really requires their normal summon, I'm also super fine with this card. So this is like a double-edged type of deal where, sure, this is not like the best trap, but it is one of the best mills, and it's still a decent trap anyway. Then one Foolish Burial to send Yugioh or Kelbeck, and then pray that your opponent is not on Tearlaments. Then one Terraforming. I really hated this card. Like, I already knew that this played into Droll, but it's also like a bad mill. But again, whenever you don't have Perlerino, you just feel so behind, because not having Perlerino not only means you don't have on-access demand of popping if you have a Shuffler in graveyard, you also do not have just the popping in general on your opponent's turn if you don't have a Shuffler in graveyard. You also don't have the pop on your own turn to pop your Kaleido to send one extra thing, and you probably also do not have Sharon access because she's a one-off. So not having Perlerino is like the worst thing possible. This deck is like 35% weaker if there's no Perlerino on your board, so I want to have it at all times. That's why I play Terraforming, but I do actually hate this card as well. Then Triple Goods. I do not understand why people don't play this. Like, I understand it's a bad mill, but if I have a deck full of good mills and then no way to start playing to mill them, that sucks ass. And again, I want Perlerino, but more importantly, this also plays a little bit around Droll, because you can just set up the Trivic Karma, start playing, and then if they Droll, you just chain the Trivic Karma. That way you at least have one extra ad. And also, you could just start playing and then see where you get interrupted or where you got stuck maybe with a bad mill, and then you can just extend with the goods on top of that. So while I understand it's a bad mill, it is one of the most flexible cards in our deck in terms of like starters and extenders and so forth, that I thought it was very crucial. With that being said, if you are really desperately trying to like diversify your starters so that you never open doubles, which can be like a real thing you might be afraid of, then you could maybe only play two. Oh, also, these sleeves are beautiful. I bought them at the event. I'm in love with them. They really go super great with like my playmat right here, zerodamagegaming.com, use the code Solemn, and also my deck box. So everything is on brand, you know. Big Tearlaments fanboy over here. Oh, also, I don't have the card in frame. There we go. There's the boy. Then the one Trivic Karma. I hate this card. I hate this card with a burning passion. The amounts of times I have drawn this card and then just got stuck in my hand. I am playing blocker, actually. Barricade Borg blocker is super crucial in this deck just to unbrick yourself, but like, I don't know, it feels so bad to go into as well. You need to play it, but it's like a Kashtira Big Bang, only worse. Then I play triple Fenrir. This card, I know a lot of people hate it because it's like, oh, it's a bad mill, but in my opinion, it is really good to start playing into boards with. Like, it will force interruptions by itself, and if it doesn't, well, then you're gonna start freely breaking the board, because as you start playing, they will have to activate something at some point. And also, Fenrir, in my opinion, is even crazier in decks where it is also a starter. So like, this is a board breaker, so we have 6 going second cards instead of the 3 that some people might be settling for, but then it just so happens to also be a play starter. So if you want to see this card as like a triple tactics talents, obviously it's not as good as a breaker as triple tactics talents, but if you want to see it as a triple tactics talents, it's a talent that also gets you to engine without your opponent having to have ashed you. And again, I expected a bunch of Tearlaments. If you start with this card on your board against Tearlaments, they don't really want to resolve any of their fusions. Like, they would have to have exactly Grapha just to stop this from resolving, but then at least you've already baited their Graphas. Now they're feeling bad again. And going second, again, when you get Dwellered, which you will in the mirror, because at one point their Yugioh or Kelbeck is going to resolve, they're going to mill 5, they're praying that you don't mill well, but they will see your Tearlaments cards, they will make the Dweller. If you then have nothing, you know, you're just hoping that you can make a Dweller Zeus line somehow through their board, that just feels awful. So Fenrir, a little bit better for that as well. Oh boy, also that ulti just goes so hard. Then we have the Ishizu cards. Again, I would love to just see these banned and then just give us back some names, you know. Then I have one Destrudo. I think making Baron is way too important. Again, during the main event, I just got blown out by Evenlease in my fucking Pearly deck, and so I just do not want this deck to get blown out by Evenlease. Even though you can say like, oh, but Redoer plays around it, blah, 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 blah. But then you still lose your Rhino, you still lose your Sulik, you still lose your Scream. You might have like 2 fusions, but you don't really generate that much follow-up. So if they still do something after that, it kind of depends, but it just doesn't feel great. I would much rather just not deal with the broken board breakers of the format. Tactics is another one, Thrust and so forth. I would like to have like a Baron and or Toad on the board. And then finally, I'm playing triple Kaijus. A little combination. I just wanted a little more Aqua and a little more Dark. So this is a 2-1. Do with this what you will. Do you want to make more Kaleido or do you want to make more Bahamut Shark? Now for the extra, you will notice that while my main deck, I sometimes consider the tier mirror, the extra deck, I kind of was like, oh, fuck it. Which I think is wrong. I did expect a lot of tier, but I did not expect this much tier. Even though I think the deck is like not the best deck of the format even. It did convert very well at the YCS. The Mud Dragon and Garura, which are like the worst but sometimes really important fusions. Then we have Grafa and Rulkolos, which are of course our King of the Swamp targets. We have Kaleido Heart, which is the good boy slash girl that kind of keeps the whole deck together. Like, I honestly think Kaleido might be the best fusion in this deck. I have a Stapelia because this card is like what you make once they start playing into your board and your Kaleido sends something, or your Sulik sends a Sharon, depending on what your final board is. You know, this might be something you end up making. Then we play the one Guardian Chimera to break boards with King of the Swamp. This card is very underrated by people who don't play modern tier that much. Overall, this card is just crazy. And also, you can always chain block it. Like, you're always going to be able to just go chainlink one Guardian Chimera, chainlink two Tier Cash or Sharon or Kelbeck. Also, this card is even better if you do play Fenrir, because that way, if they have something like a pop or a spin to get rid of your normal summon, now you can't make Guardian Chimera with a poly, but if you go like special Fenrir, add Tier Cash, normal summon something, now you try poly, they're probably not going to be able to just remove those two cards in one go. And the Fenrir already replaced himself as well with the Tier Cash add, and he might even already have baited some interrupt so that they don't get anything banished face down. So overall, this card gets even better with Fenrir. Then finally, I'm playing the one Grand Guignol. So this is very important to me because whenever I don't have an Omni Negate on my board, I just feel like I will be blown out by some board breaker combination. So being able to make a Grand Guignol and then send a Destrudo from my deck to then make Baron is very important. Now, this is also why on the first day I was playing a build without King of the Swamp and with Cartesia, because then I could just consistently make Grand Guignol, always send Destrudo, or send Garura if I want to draw into gas. That's also an option. And then the Cartesia would come back to my hand if I milled 2, or if I hard made this with just Cartesia and something else, like Radiant, for example, or even a tier name. Then Cartesia would come back to my hand if I dropped the Garura, or if I killed this with the Baron, so that creates follow-up. And then you could also play a target for Grand Guignol, again, depending on the rest of the deck, but if you don't play King of the Swamp, you have room because the Grafa and the Rulkolos are gone. So you play some target for this, and this way, even if you get nipped, because a lot of those Destrudo lines often semi-play into nip, like there still be a board, but not as big, then suddenly the Grand Guignol turns into another interrupt, which is amazing. Also, if you don't get nipped, and you make your board with Baron and so forth, you kill the Grand Guignol, now this is another interrupt in the graveyard, so even if you get blown out by some kind of breakers, you have a graveyard-based interrupt, just like the Shufflers, just of the Grand Guignol. So if you're gonna play like a Grand Guignol type of deck, I do recommend you play a target for this if you find a room. But I know TEARLAMENTS extra decks are super tight, but this is just something I was trying with the Cartesia, and I do actually maybe prefer that build. So if you want to see that, let me know in the comments down below. So this is what I mean by not really respecting the tier mirror that much in the extra deck. This is so many fusions which you don't have access to whenever you get Dwellered, that I'm not so sure if this is the way to move forward if a lot of people keep on coping on tier. Now I say coping, obviously it's like a good deck, but I don't think it's a best deck of the format type of good deck, you know? Then we have one Barricade Borg blocker. This was my only link, and again, this is like super disrespect to the mirror because, well, you get blown the fuck out by a Dweller, but I just didn't want to brick on Trivic Karma, Agido, and Kelbeck and so forth. Like day one, I was not playing this card, and I bricked so often on those cards, it was absolutely crazy. I was constantly just sitting there going, okay, I won, but I had 3 dead cards in my hand. I was winning off 2 cards in my hand. This is stupid. I want to have blocker, so I get those out of my hand and actually play with my full hand. Oh, then we have Baron, which is a Synchro, of course. Absolutely crazy card. And then for the Xyz, I'm playing a bunch. I'm playing the Bahamut Shark together with the Toad. Very important. Again, I like to put up Omni Negates. I do not want to get blown out by board breakers. And this then also gets you follow-up, and it's an Aqua for Kaleido Heart. Then there's Time Thief Redoer. Sometimes you'll also get like spells, because a lot of decks are on lots of spells right now. Again, Unchained has all of those board breakers. Pearly is a pure spell deck. Rescue Ace also has a bunch of quick play spells. And then TEARLAMENTS, of course, also has a bunch of spells. So very often Redoer is actually going to draw you a card as well. Then I'm playing Abyss Dweller, the boy that defines the Unchained matchup and the tier mirror. Also ulti. I updated this at the YCS itself. Toxic as fuck card. Should probably be banned. This would also make the mirror far more skillful, because right now it's just like you mill both and you see, oh, they're tier. I hope they don't mill well. I hope I mill well. I see your tier cards. I make a Dweller. I win. Game 2 takes a century. Game 3 time, Lamau. This was fun. That is basically the mirror. I fucking hated it all weekend, and that's all basically because of this card. Without this card, we could have skillful mirrors. So yeah, let's get rid of this piece of shit. And then finally, Zeus. Now, Zeus, I hated this card. I actually played Tier a lot. I took Pearly to the YCS because I felt Tier was a little cope-ish. I mean, I guess it wasn't because so many people were on those breakers that Tier then naturally plays better into. But from all that playing with Tier, I was never running Zeus because I already had concluded that whenever you have the opportunity to Zeus, you have already committed into Scream and Pearl Rhino and all your other cards that like you don't even want to Zeus. And I knew this, but for some reason I was like, oh, but what if the Tier mirror be able to make a Zeus just like in the Ishizu Tier days, and I can make a Zeus and at least wipe under Dweller, but that just barely comes up. It's not worth a slot. I already knew this, but for some reason I just went monkey brain and put it back in thinking of the Ishizu Tier days. This card is just ass. This should literally be anything else. Now for the side deck, I'm playing Duster, Lightning Storm, Lightning Storm. I did want to respect Rescue Ace. Now I'm aware they could Ibli lock me, and if they do, oh well, GG, you got it. But overall, I just wanted to respect any type of back row. I also wanted to go like against Flu if they have the Continuous and the Field Spell and the Trap Set. Maybe some other bullshit card. I just want to go like, get fucked. Now you could also Twin Twister, but I just don't want to minus like that. In general, back row is cringe. Exo Sister also exists. Then next in the side, we have triple Book of Eclipse. This I was unsure of. I was considering playing Xyz and Core, but then I also considered that the format is so wide open. As you could see on the YCS Dortmund graph, like no deck had more than 12% representation or something. So I wanted something that isn't as targeted, but still hurts Pearly. Also, if you Xyz and Core Pearly, they get like a bunch of monsters that are not targetable if they have street access, which means you might not even be able to kill because a bunch of our removal is targeted. And you need to kill because they'll have like 8 cards follow up. So Xyz and Core, while cool in theory and definitely good for Pearly, those two arguments like format diversity and hard to kill true on Core made me decide to just Eclipse instead. Not sure if I like it. I've versed no Pearly. I've versed a lot of Tier Mirrors and Unchained and Dark World even. Then Flu. I versed a lot of Flu in the week leading up to the event. So I was like, wow, a lot of people are on Flu to fuck with Unchained. I'll consider this card. Now you could say, oh, but there's other cards against Flu. And the reason I chose these is because they are good both when you do play and when you don't play. So when you get shifted, you can normal summon Banshee, get rid of it, and Zombie World, or you can just activate Zombie World. But when you don't get shifted, you can mill your Banshee and then also get Zombie World. So no matter what, whether you play or don't play, this is a good card against Flu. You can also just do this going second. If they're under Zombie World, it's pretty unlikely that they OTK you if you do like literally anything but pass on Zombie World. Even like if you just pass on Zombie World, it might be enough. So this felt like the card for Flu. There's other matchups that people say, oh, this card is also good against, and that is true, but I feel other cards in the side are better than this against those matchups in general. Now, of course, if I'm against plants, you know, drop that shit on them. but other decks, usually I'm like, I would rather have, you know, a Super Poly into a Dragon Link board than a Zombie World, if you know what I'm talking about. Next, I'm playing triple Super Poly. This card is like really solid against a variety of diverse decks, but then pretty mid into the best decks, which is Pearly and Unchained. So when I'm against Pearly and Unchained, this card does nothing. It just stays in my side. But all the random rogue crap, you know, that other category or branded type of decks, Dragon Link type of decks, all of that, the Super Poly goes in and goes hard. Finally, I'm playing triple Bestial. I decided for the Magnamut because, again, I was expecting a lot of Tier Mirrors. So while my extra deck, like, disrespected that fact, my side deck and my main did respect it. So being able to just go Magnamut and search a Druid's Worm is, like, game winning. With that being said, though, because we're not playing as high of an amount of these, Wallow is not as valid. Like, people might be playing Wallow for the Tier Mirror, thinking, oh, I'll just make it, maybe even with Mali. But, like, if you're in the Tier Mirror, you're getting Dweller, so Mali is dead. Garura is also dead. The Destiny Hero is also dead. You could Diviner, but then you have to, like, Diviner, send only Shuffler. Do you want to play Diviner when you only have 2 targets? Because obviously you don't want to Agido them, especially when you're under Dweller. So the Wallow line is not as real as I would hope, which is why I didn't play it. But the Bestials themselves are still high impact enough that that's worth it. So this was my tier deck. I hope you found this very interesting. This little bad boy needs to get a frame very soon. Hope you found this interesting. Let me know your thoughts on TEARLAMENTS in the comments down below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.